All right, guys, today is May 28th, Saturday, May 28th, 2022. So I'm getting a late start because the dog had a grooming appointment this morning and I have to drive her over to Catoosa, drop her off. She was there a couple hours and I had to go back and pick her up. And then, wouldn't you know it, it actually rained again a little bit earlier. So the sun came back out and now it is super muggy. But, you know, at least it's not raining now. I can work in the heat. I don't care about sweating, but so I jacked the truck up a little bit. I got a few more things removed. I got my chain set up back here. I've got kind of a mess with this cruise control pod. It bolts onto the back of the head. So what I'm going to try to do is when I start hoisting it up out of here and get it forward a little bit, I hope it can come forward enough for me to get to it on the back to unbolt it. I'm going to hook that back up on the truck. It had the rod off of it, and I've acquired one. I just have to find it. I think it's in my attic in a certain box, so I'll have to climb up there and find it. But I know I bought it at one point. So I'm getting ready to get in there and break the other 3 exhaust studs off. I mean, remove the nuts off the exhaust manifold on the other side. One broke off down here out of the 3, so that's going to be fun trying to extract that. It broke off clean inside the manifold too. So I've got my extra yoke here. This is the one I keep around here for plugging the transmission tail shaft, because I'm going to be pulling the motor and trans together, because I'm going to separate the trans and you know, reseal everything. But I'll climb under here. So here's the cracked transmission mount I was talking about. So definitely gonna have to put a trans mount in it. I tried to get this off the other day and it is really not having it. I'm gonna try it again if this won't come loose. Like, it's trying to strip past the lock plate here. So I may end up having to take the little bolt out of here and just pull the whole unit out of the side of the trans. But anyway, I've got a little bit of work to do. So now I got to pull the drive shaft out of the truck. So I've got to undo the carrier bearing, which is a new one that I put in when it was really cold. I've got to undo this, and I got to take those bolts out and then pull the whole unit out. And then I'm going to stick that yoke in here to keep it from bleeding all over my driveway. So one thing I didn't think about, I'm glad I saw it, fuel filter. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the list and replace that before I even fire the truck up. Just basically doing a mega tune-up on everything. Kind of want to one and done this. With the luck I've been having lately, I don't need a $20 part causing me issues, you know what I mean? So I have to undo the starter wires, speedo cable, drive shaft, and that exhaust manifold. And then at that point, I think it's ready to pretty much come out of here. So it's kind of silly the way they've designed this on this truck. This is a 700 R4 in this truck, and you can't get to the bolts back here at the back of the pan to change your fluid and filter easily. So you've got to drop the cross member and everything to do that. So what I was kind of thinking about doing was marking it out, or at least notching it with my plasma cutter to get to the bolts better. But I was thinking about just chopping a section out of this. I don't think it's going to hurt it to not have it, but it's just kind of a silly design, really. I mean, who the hell wants to take their transmission cross member out just to change their transmission fluid? So anyway, I'm going to try to modify that somehow. But this is it's been quite the mess, you know, when you're used to, you know, pulling engines out of old cars that are carbureted. They've got like 10 things to unhook and you can pull the motor and trans out together, you know what I mean? This one's got quite a bit more stuff to do, but I don't really mind the fuel injection on this truck. I mean, it runs good, and you know, I'm sure it gets decent fuel mileage for what it does. So I unhooked the knock sensor off the side of the block a while ago, and the plug-in was connected to the knock sensor, but the whole inner part of the knock sensor was broken. It was still connected to the knock sensor, but you could wiggle it back and forth, so it needs a new knock sensor. No telling how long that's been broken. I think Oh yeah, I got two right here. Look at that. How awesome is that? I love having spare parts. So that makes it kind of nice. It's nice when you've, you know, I've pretty much worked on small block Chevys all my life, so I've acquired quite a stash of parts. And it, you know, that even though that knock sensor probably is not very expensive, I have a lot of other stuff to buy. So having that, you know, is gonna really help, you know what I mean, save a little money. So I did pull one spark plug. I mainly pulled it just to get the number off of it to add it to my list. What did I do with it? Now, when I bought this truck a few years ago for my father-in-law, this is one of the things I changed, but I just bought a stock replacement spark plug, AC Delco. But it didn't really look like it was burning any oil, but that's just one plug. I'm sure we're gonna find one. When I get that engine out and start tearing it apart, I'm sure I'm gonna find something, but. So this truck could have an intermittent check engine light, which showed an EGR code. It had intermittent rough idle, like you'd be at a stoplight and it'd be idling fine, then it'd kind of stumble for a minute or two, or a second, or 4 or 5 seconds or so, and then it'd clear up. And then you'd take off at the stoplight, driving, and then next time you stopped, it wouldn't be missing. It's just kind of a weird deal. So I'm sure it's a combination of a little bit of everything going on, but I'm definitely going to keep it fuel injection. I'd already had an old school buddy of mine. He's about 20 years older than me, and he goes, well, I'd put a carburetor on that thing. Do you know how much work that would be to put a carburetor on this truck, and how much money that would cost me to do that? So I'd either have to put a fuel pressure regulator in line for the carburetor to knock these fuel injection fuel pumps that are in the dual tanks to knock the pressure down, or put a mechanical fuel pump on it. It does have a plate on it, so I'm assuming it's drilled for a mechanical pump. But I'd have to buy a carburetor, or buy an intake and buy a carburetor. I mean, this thing was running fine, it just had a knock in it. So I don't understand the point of that. I could understand if the computer was fried or something was bad, really bad wrong, that was expensive to fix, but as far as the TBI system on these trucks is pretty primitive. I mean, it's pretty simple in a sense. Now, keep in mind, I'm not huge on fuel injection. I mean, it's great and everything, don't get me wrong. I just hate trying to diagnose problems. If they don't throw a light to where you can look it up and see what's wrong with it, if it's doing weird stuff, it's quite the mess to try to track down. But it'll have optimized fuel mileage and everything. I did put an O2 sensor in this new a few years ago too, but anyway, I've got a lot of work here to do, but hopefully I'll have this engine and trans out today. I'd like to at least get this thing set down here in the driveway and at least get the transmission and torque converter and everything undone from it, and maybe get the heads ripped off of it. I want to check the cylinders for wear, and probably be able to get it on the engine stand at that point. But so I'm going to end up putting a micro sleeve on the balancer. If nobody's ever done that, I'll show you how to do that. It's not that difficult. It just so you know, if you ever remove a balancer from an old used engine, it's always going to have a groove wore in it from the front seal where it's rode for 100,000 plus miles. So if your front seal's leaking at your timing cover and you replace the seal and it's still leaking, it's probably because of the groove in the balancer. So they sell what's called a micro sleeve, real paper thin sleeve that you knock onto the balancer. And I got to tell you, those don't last very long either, because they're thin metal and they actually will wear out. The cure-all fix-all for a long time or a lot of miles is a new balancer. But I'm going to be so tapped buying all this stuff for this that I'm just going to go ahead and micro sleeve it, and it'll get me by for a while. But usually when I build an old car, I usually try to buy a new balancer, and that way I don't have to mess with the micro sleeve and all that kind of crap. But so definitely going to be doing that. But I'm going to be putting all new seals in the trans on the exterior. I'm not tearing that transmission apart, but I noticed under here, which is something I usually check, I've got a little bit of play in the drive shaft right here. just a little bit. So I may put a new bushing in that tail shaft because it'll unbolt. So I may go ahead when I have the trans out and put a new bushing in there. That'll keep me from wearing out my U-joints. Well, you know, help prevent them from wearing out a little sooner, I should say. Now it seems like I have a bushing over here. I got lots of little goodies in this old box here. I just need to dig through and see what all I got. I may even have some transmission seals in here. Maybe check that out. I got me a torque thrust wheel, but it won't fit the truck. It's a little bit small of a bolt pattern. Yeah, I know, not funny. What is this? Hey, 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 look at there. So there's the O-ring for the speedometer gear. Here's the shift shaft seal that's metal clad. And then here is the kickdown cable seal, TV cable, whatever you want to call it. So that was a pretty good deal there. I thought I had a bushing for let's see, bushing kit. Let's see what we got. Well, these are A-arm bushings. I bet those are G-body. Well, crap. I thought I had a bushing for the tail shaft of a transmission. Oh well. That was a pretty good score. That'll save me a little money there. If those are still soft, I need to check them out. There's no telling how long they've been in that box. Anyway, I'm going to get back on it, guys.